Giridharadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 14. Sashvat Swarupa Mahasaiva Nipita Bheda Mohaya Bodha Dishanaya Namha Parasmai Vishvodbhavastiti layeshu nimitta lila Rasayate nama idam chakrimeshvaraya Shashvat, eternally, Sarupa, transcendental form, Mahasa, by the glories, Eva, certainly, Nipita, distinguished, Bheda, differentiation, Mohaya, unto the illusory conception, Bodha, self-knowledge, Dishanaya, intelligence, Namaha, obeisances, Parasmai, unto the transcendence, Vishva Udbhava, creation of the cosmic manifestation, Stiti, maintenance, Layeshu, also destruction, Nimitta, for the matter of Leela, by such pastimes. Rasaya, for enjoyment. Te, unto you. Namaha, obeisances. Idam, this. Chakrima, do I perform. Ishvaraya, unto the Supreme. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let me offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Transcendence, who is eternally distinguished by His internal potency. His indistinguishable impersonal feature is realized by intelligence for self-realization. I offer my obeisances unto Him, who by His pastimes enjoys the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. So please repeat. Let me offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Transcendence, who is eternally distinguished by His internal potency. His indistinguishable impersonal feature is realized by intelligence for self-realization. I offer my obeisances unto Him, who by His pastimes enjoys the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord is eternally distinguished from the living entities by His internal potency, although He is also understood in His impersonal feature by self-realized intelligence. Devotees of the Lord, therefore, offer all respectful obeisances unto the impersonal feature of the Lord. The word rasa is significant herein. The rasa dance is performed by Lord Krishna in the company of the cowherd damsels at Vrindavan. And the personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshahi Vishnu, is also engaged in rasa, enjoyment, with his external potency, by which he creates, maintains, and dissolves the entire material manifestation. Indirectly, Lord Brahma offers his respectful obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna, who is factually ever engaged in rasa enjoyment with the gopis, as confirmed in the Gopala Tapani Upanishad in the following words: Paradhante so buddhyata gopavesho me purushaha purastad avirbhabhuva. The distinction between the Lord and the living entity is definitely experienced when there is sufficient intelligence to understand his internal potency, as distinguished from the external potency by which he makes possible the material manifestation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnana Timidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So this verses of Lord Brahma continuing here, and in this verse Lord Brahma is showing the distinction or showing the difference between the Lord and the living entity. And he says that the Lord is distinct because of his internal potency. So we can see that Krishna and his many different incarnations are coming and performing activities in the material world. And to some people they appear like normal activities. We know when Krishna himself was here, even in the Rajasuya Yagya, even when he was coming to Mathura, all different people saw him in different ways, and some people saw him as just another person. But Lord Brahma is pointing out the difference here, that the Lord has an internal potency. So he has a completely separate internal spiritual reality, a spiritual world that he has manifested by his internal potency. And of course, the living entities, they can't say the same thing. Living entities have a very small potency, a spark, but they haven't manifested an entire unlimited creation of spiritual reality as has the Lord. So this is the big difference. And it's important to distinguish this because people who say that the impersonal feature, the Brahman feature of the Lord is supreme, they don't accept this internal potency. So without knowledge of the internal potency, the spiritual world, then one can think that all living entities are the same. But Prabhupada's saying here in the purport, summarizing the statement of Lord Brahma himself, and of course these prayers are offered very soon after Lord Brahma had actually experienced, he'd had the divine darshan of the Lord, of Lord Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So Lord Brahma, he was looking for the Lord. He was going down on this lotus stem that he was sitting on, but he couldn't find the Lord. He even went into the water of the Garbhodaka ocean, but he couldn't find the source of that lotus. So then he performed austerities, and in his heart he saw the Lord. In his heart he had the darshan of Lord Garbhodakshay Vishnu lying on the beautiful soft serpent bed, Anantashesha with his thousands of hoods, and the Lord was glowing with a beautiful helmet. We heard all the beautiful prayers. So Lord Brahma himself is in no doubt about this. He's in no doubt that the personality of Godhead is the supreme reality. And he's sharing this, as Prabhupada says. The distinction between the Lord and the living entity is definitely experienced when there is sufficient intelligence to understand his internal potency, as distinguished from the external potency by which he makes possible the material manifestation. In Bhagavad Gita 7.25, Krishna is giving a verse describing a similar thing. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritha mudho yam nabhijanati lokomam ajam abhyayam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent, for them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So this same internal potency is being described as it covers, this internal potency covers, and the Brahman is part of the internal potency that covers the knowledge of people who, as Prabhupada said, as Lord Brahma says, don't have the intelligence to understand that the Lord has his own internal potency, he has his own spiritual world. And if the Lord has no internal potency, if he is simply a manifestation of Brahman, as all of the rest of the living entities are manifestations of Brahman, then there would be no difference between the Jiva and the Ishvara. There'd be no difference between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. There'll be no difference. That'd all just be Brahman. But Krishna makes this very clear in Gita, in this verse here. Upadrast anumantacha bharta bhakta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi ukto dehismin purusha para. And this comes just after the verse where he's describing the nature of the living entity, that although they are prakriti, apariyamitastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param, he describes in the fourth chapter that the living entities are fourth or seventh. I have to check that. But he describes that the living entities are part of his energy, just like earth, water, fire. All of these things are his energy. The living entities are his energy, they're prakriti. But then in the 13th chapter, he describes what happens to that mentality when the living entity comes into the material world. He takes the position of enjoyer. Purusha prakriti stohi, bhunkte prakriti jan gunan, karanam guna sangosha, sat asadyoni janmashu. Now the living entity takes the position of the enjoyer, tries to become the controller and enjoyer. And then the very next verse is this verse, Upadrastana mantasa. So he immediately clarifies that although the living entity takes this position as the enjoyer, but still he is a different category. He's a jiva. He's a small spark, like Krishna says, Mamevam shul jiva loke. They're his amsha, they're his little spark. We are all his little spark rays of God, of the Supreme Source, Krishna. So he says that in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the Supreme Proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, Upadrasta Anumantacha, and who is known as the Super Soul, right? Paramatma. Paramatma eti chapyukta. So he makes it very clear that although the living entity and the Supreme Lord are both of the nature of spirit, they're both the nature of Brahman, but there is a difference between the Parabrahman, the Brahman and the Parabrahman, or the Atma and the Paramatma. In Katha Upanishad, it's also said, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kamam, that there is one Supreme Eternal that is fulfilling all the needs of all of the others. So this idea that there is an impersonal feature, that all of the impersonal philosophers and all of those in the world who are attaining or trying to attain liberation and merge into the Supreme Spirit, into the Supreme Light, this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, that yes, that is a reality. That is reality. And Prabhupada actually says in the purport, right, that the devotees offer their obeisances to the impersonal form. Is it the purport or actually the verse itself? In the purport, Prabhupada says. So this feature, this Brahman feature, is existing, it is reality, but there is another two features. Srimad Bhagavatam gives. Vadanti tattva vidam tattvam yajgayam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabjate. So the great learned sages, they describe that as well as this impersonal light, the impersonal spirit, there's also a paramatma feature. There's a personal feature of the Lord that's expanded into every living being, as we've just read, is overseeing, is permitting all the activities of the individual soul. And then ultimately there's Bhagavan, the Supreme Person, that exists in his own world, his own reality. And we can see in this verse, Lord Brahma is saying that this impersonal feature can be realized through intelligence, right? So the intelligence is the function of discriminating, right? Discriminating. The mind is thinking, feeling, willing, accepting, rejecting, all of the emotions. This is in the mind. But above the mind is the intelligence that's discriminating. That yes, I feel like I want to do this, but last time I did that, didn't turn out so good. That's intelligence, right? Intelligence is discriminating. So through the intelligence, one can actually come to this Brahman level. Neti, neti, not this, not this. By analyzing, discriminating that this particular activity is temporary, this body is temporary, the mind is temporary, but the existence is eternal. Through this intelligence, one can actually come to that level of Brahman, of understanding what is eternal and what is temporary. Lord Brahma is saying here. But beyond that, to go to the personal feature, it requires something else. Through intelligence, we cannot reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Ata Sri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grayam indriye. Grayam, grasp. The intelligence cannot grasp it. But sevan mukhe hi jivado swayam eva spuratyada. The Supreme Person can be attained through service. Right? Krishna says in Gita, Bhakti mama vijanati yavanyas chasmi tatvata tadomam tatvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. That when one has bhakti, when one's developed devotion, bhakti, personal desire to please the Lord, when one develops that, then they can actually vishate tadanantaram. They can actually enter into the spiritual world, Krishna says. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. We can give a simple example, a mundane example, that a person may have a very big business that has so many branches, has so many employees and wages going out and everything, but all of that is the energy of that person, right? That businessman or businesswoman, that's their energy, right? But then if you want to get to know them, if you want to get invited to their house, if you want to see them in a social setting, it's not enough just to engage with their business, to engage to buy their products or work in their company or engage with their energy. You have to actually get to know them as a person, get to know them as a friend, and then you can enter into their own familial, intimate, friendly situation. So in the similar way, it's not enough to just know the energy of the Lord. If you want to actually come to bhakti, you want to actually personally interact with love, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Lord Chaitanya's teachings, at Dashashwamedha Ghat in Varanasi, he spoke for 10 days to Sanatana Goswami. And of that chapter 20 of Madhya Lila Chaitanya Charitamrita, very wonderfully, the verse is verse 108, which is a very key verse in the philosophy and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that verse is Jivara Surup Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. That the eternal Surup of the living entity is to be an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beda Beda Prakash. So the living entity is a emanation. He is a Shakti, he's an energy of the Lord, but he's Tatashta, right? Tatashta, Shta means situated, and Tata means like the bank, like the bank of a river or somewhere where there's land on one side and water on the other. So the living entities are situated on the margin between the spiritual energy. They're not internal potency, they're not external potency. They're situated in the middle. In other words, they can go one way or the other. Krishnera of Krishna, Tatashta Shakti. They're the energy of the Lord. Beda Beda Prakash. Prakash means manifested. Beda Abeda. Beda means different. I think even in this verse we have the word Beda is there. Beda differentiation. Even in this verse, same word is there. Beda means different, and Abeda means not different, the same. So he's a manifestation, the living entity. We are manifestation, simultaneously one with the Lord and simultaneously different. So we are eternal, we are full of knowledge, full of bliss in our original position, but we're very, very minute. The Lord is infinite and we are infinitesimal. But just like a drop of water in the ocean, from the ocean, gives some idea of the ocean that is salty, etc. The certain minerals are there. So we can understand the nature of the Lord by understanding the nature of our own soul. So this nature is to serve God purely. That is the nature, ultimately, of the living entity, as being told to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then the question comes that if this is the perfection to become a servant, then maybe I have so many bad feelings, I have so many bad experiences about being a servant. How do I know that by becoming a servant I'll be ultimately happy? But being a servant of Krishna, being a servant of the supreme source of every position, to being a servant of somebody who is trying to exploit us and enjoy us in this material world. Very different. And we can see one example of this is when Srila Prabhupada went to England in 1969, 1970. He went to England. His 6 devotees had gone before him, and they had actually met the Beatles. And it's hard for us to imagine in today's day and age just how famous and influential the Beatles were in the 60s, in that decade. But they're extremely, extremely famous people. And we can hear Shyama Sundar Prabhu, who's one of the devotees who actually met them, that he relates how sometimes people would ask them, how did you just go and just meet the Beatles and meet all these famous people and just talk with them? Weren't you kind of awestruck? And he said, no. He said, the reason why? We had Prabhupada. He said, we had Prabhupada. He met Prabhupada in, I think, 1967 in San Francisco on the introduction of our dear Mukunda Maharaj. So Shyama Sundar Prabhu is saying that they had the association of Prabhupada. And when they had the association of the pure devotee of the Lord, the association of any exalted person of this world was just very, very insignificant. And they could perceive this very clearly, and they could see it with their own eyes, that when such very exalted, famous people of the world, that newspapers, magazines hung on their every word, wanted to get a few words from them, hear their view of the world. They were completely, just so exalted that when they came in front of the pure devotee, the pure servant of the Lord, that they just seemed like very insignificant kind of characters, very insignificant. And they could see that very clearly, even when these famous people came to Prabhupada, that the famous people themselves were awestruck by Prabhupada. So we can see that becoming a servant of the Lord is not making us smaller, but is making us unlimitedly greater. If we can become a pure devotee of the Lord, then that is the most exalted position. So we don't need to worry that if I become a servant, maybe I'll be just in a low position, maybe I'll get exploited, something like that. But if we actually become a servant of Krishna, then we actually get the highest position, ultimately connection with Krishna on the spiritual platform. And sometimes we think that the process of bhakti or the process of devotional service is all about restrictions, that we're becoming a servant and then there's so many restrictions. Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do that, I have to give up that. But actually, this is just an in the beginning is a way to protect us and avoid further entanglement in the material world. There's a very nice verse in Srimad Bhagavatam that says, by discovering the faultiness of his desiring to lord it over material nature, and by therefore giving it up, the living entity becomes independent and stands in his own glory. Right? So we can see actually that as the soul becomes less conditioned, it becomes more able to express its independence, to express its free will. Just like the trees, they have very little independence. They can grow a bit towards the sun, not much else. Then the animals, they're a little more free. The soul is a little more free. And they have some independence, but it's very much limited to their own instincts, their own nature. And then when the soul comes to the human form, then it is much more free to actually be able to express its independence, to express its free will, to do things. So we can see that when the soul is ultimately completely liberated from matter altogether, then it can actually express itself. It can actually express its free will. So in the beginning, this following rules and things, it's just to stop us getting reinfected with the material modes, but ultimately it's leading to a place of freedom, right? Freedom. Just like we can see that example of through the plants, animals, human beings. And in this world we're conditioned by our previous activities, right? Through our karma, this karma is a crystallization of our misuse of free will. Through our free will, we've decided to get involved in the material nature, Purusha Prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti janguna. And then Karanam Guna Sangosha, Sad Asad, in auspicious and inauspicious situations arise from that. And then our free will becomes limited more and more. The more we misuse it, that free will becomes our destiny, becomes our karma, and then that situation we have to act in from there. So we're limited by our karma, which is actually our misuse of free will in the past. And when if we want to love purely, we have to be unconditioned. We have to get free from this karma. Everybody wants to love, but two people come together and one person is super attached to going to the ballet, another person is super attached to going to the football, soccer game, whatever. And how can they actually do what the other person wants? How can they actually serve and please the other person? Because they're already compromised. I want to do that. Now that's a kind of gross example, right? But in the conditioned state, everyone is like that. Everyone's trying to love someone, and that person has their own conditioning, has their own likes, whatever. So it's not possible for love to actually flow, right? But when the soul is free, from these fetters of matter, right? The restriction of matter, then it can actually give its love freely. And we know Krishna is always ready to accept. He says, Yayatam mam prapadyante. So he's free. He's completely free and he's completely independent and he's ready to reciprocate, he says. Yayatam mam prapadyante tam sateva bhajami ham. He says, however you reciprocate, however you approach me, whatever love you offer to me, I will reciprocate with that. He's free. He's ready to reciprocate. The problem is us, right? And we can see that on the very highest levels, as being brought out in this verse, that Lord Brahma is glorifying Garbhodakshay Vishnu and saying that he's having this rasa, he's having enjoyment of manifesting the material world. And the acharyas say he's indirectly hinting at Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna is having rasa dance with the residents of Vrindavan. And we can see that there's a pastime with the gopis of Vrindavan where everyone was asked to give some of their foot dust for Krishna. And everyone's like, no, I'm going to go to hell if you take my dust and put it on Krishna's head. So he went to all the demigods, everyone like that. And then finally, it's Narada Muni, he came to the gopis. And he said, and they said, here, take it. And he said, aren't you worried to go to hell? Everyone else is so worried about going to hell. by giving their foot to us. It's very disrespectful, putting your feet on someone. And this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they said, we don't care. They say, if Krishna is happy, for Krishna to be happy, we have to go to hell, then for us, that's happiness. So they were willing to do anything because they're free, they're liberated, they're able to freely love, right? So everybody is trying to love in this world, but to purely love, to truly love, we have to become free from matter and be able to truly give ourselves to the beloved Lord Krishna. And he is ready to give himself to us. So thank you very much. I'll stop there and leave a few moments for questions, if there's any.
Thank you for the class. You're mentioning about if a businessman, there's people working for him and they know him on a business level, but if they want to have a more personal relationship, they have to get to know the person. So similarly with Krishna, you said we need to try to get to know him. But can you talk about the intricacies and the details of how to get to know Krishna? Because if someone wanted to get to know someone, you would think that if someone wanted to get to know me and they force their attention on me, I'll be thinking, oh, who's this person? So there is also an art of getting to know a person to earn that trust of the person. So can you talk a bit more?
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful question. Thank you. And Srila Prabhupada once was walking in a park, and there was a man walking with his dog, and the dog was very happy and walking on the leash, and the dog and the man, they're happily walking. And Prabhupada said, just like this, if I go to try to approach the man, some big famous person, he may or may not engage with us, whatever, but if we give a lozenge, Prabhupada used that word, a 1 cent lozenge, we give some little sweet to some treat to the dog, then they say, oh, so nice. Oh, you're helping my, So like that, another example is in the pastimes of Ramanujacharya, I think his name was Kuresh, or one of the disciples, that he would stand between Ramanuja and the deities with his back to the deities, and the other devotees would say, what, you have your back to the Lord? And he said, well, I don't know the Lord, but I know my Guru, and in that way I can come to know the Lord. So in our conditioned state, I'll tell one more example. One more example, but it's a nice one. Here in this exact place, New Govardhana, and I think it was 1995, that Gogovinda Swami came, and he gave a lecture here. And I won't talk for as long as he did, because he spoke till about 11:30, I think. The class went for 4 hours. And it was very wonderful. And after that, I managed to go and ask him some questions. He was staying up there. Just one question, the disciples arranged. And I said, is it possible to really know Krishna? Similar question to what you're asking. I said, is it possible to really know Krishna in this world, while we're here in this world? And he said, yes. And then he paused for a minute and he said, but only through Guru, only through the mercy of Guru. So like that, that's the same concept all the way. If we try to, understand Krishna by our own intelligence, then we won't be able to understand, because he's beyond intelligence. And actually this verse is exactly saying that through our intelligence we can come to that energy, the Brahman level, but we have to establish the personal relationship. And that personal relationship is done through his beloved, through his loving devotees. So we have our Guru, he is connected to his Guru, he's connected to his Guru, like that. There's a chain. And we can see that even in the ultimate final stage of going back to Godhead, of entering into Vraja Leela, we can see the acharyas explain that you have to meditate on an associate of the Lord in a certain way, the way that they serve the Lord. And you can, by meditating on that, they will introduce you into the pastime. So even on the very, very top levels, there's always this idea that we're not approaching Krishna directly. Dasya dasa anudas. Lord Chaitanya explained that. And at the same time, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, we are attracted to Krishna directly. And that attraction comes from hearing, chanting, remembering, right? Jivara Surupa Hoy, Krishna, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhya Kabunai, Shravana Adi, Shuddha Chitte, Karaya Udai. So the soul is eternally Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. That love for Krishna is within us all. It's within all the trees, the plants, the cows, the dogs, everybody. It's all there, but it's unmanifested, right? Shravana Adi, by hearing, chanting, remember, Shuddha Chitte, the heart becomes purified. Karaya Udai, Udai means to arise up. So by the process of hearing and chanting, like somebody's, amnesia, then the beloved, the family will come and talk to them and say, oh, do you remember 2 years ago we went to this place, we did this, we did that, and gradually they will reawaken. That's why when you take up bhakti yoga, it seems at once something very new and it's at once something very old, something that's always been with us, right? So in a sense, we're reawakening our knowledge, our devotion for Krishna. It's not something we're getting from another place. So like that, I think Krishna, Lord Chaitanya says something like that to Rupa Sanatana Goswami, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. Right? By the mercy of Guru and the mercy of Krishna, working together, the soul, makes advancement in understanding Krishna. And like that. Okay. Hare Krishna, yes. Does that answer the question? Is that at least the question being asked?
Thank you so much for your very nice class. I'm just speaking a bit to that point that you made, and you made those points so well to Vaishnavi's question.
Yeah.
I think we could possibly add the other point, which is when we study Srimad Prabhupada's books, we're actually getting to know Krishna via the transparent medium of the pure devotee. That, for example, read a Krishna book, and we can, really drill down into some of the pastimes of Krishna and his mischievousness, his way he interacts with his associates. That's also another tangible way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And if I can make
Hearing
a
about
public
Krishna.
safety announcement.
Public safety announcement. Okay, but listen up.
When the fire's on, please make sure that grill is in front of the fire.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed frequently that grill's kept behind, and I'm not like the fire police. I just come and put the grill.
Yeah.
Because one devotee got very badly burned some years back, and that's why we purchased, why that grill was purchased.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, especially for children, right? Imagine if they put their hand on it or something. So, if we can all be aware of that.
And polyester
be great.
doesn't even need direct contact with fire, it will just stick to your body.
That's what happened with this. She was wearing a nylon sari and standing close to the fire. And luckily Vaishnavi and husband were in the temple when he Vaishnavi, they managed to put it out short, otherwise it would be very much worse.
Any other questions or comments? Do I get like bonus marks for finishing early? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much for coming to class. Hare Krishna.